to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us for yet another incredible show with today's extra special guest, the lovely Roy Kowarski. Hello, Roy.
Hey, how are you doing, Michelle? How are you doing?
It's so lovely. He's such a busy man, and we're so lucky to have him come on the show today. For those of you that aren't aware of who Roy is and can't see his background at the moment because I'm talking, Roy is the founder and owner of Out There Branding, and he is a branding and marketing specialist with a really interesting background, because as much as he enjoys and works a lot with people around their branding and around their marketing, he's also incredibly passionate about helping and serving others, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that today. So, Roy, do you want to give people a bit of a background about who you are and how you came to be leading and running Out There Branding?
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. I immigrated from South Africa about 15 years ago, and I started an apparel business in Australia, which didn't go down too well. I had a business partner that cleaned me out financially, and I had to reposition myself. I had to restart again. And I founded Out There Branding probably about just close to 11 years ago. And I had to start from scratch in a strange country, no network, no money, family to feed. And put my head down and got going. Simple as that.
Wow. And was it an area that you normally or worked in before, or is branding and marketing something that you needed to kind of teach yourself as you were going along?
Not really. So because I've always been in the sales, world, marketing world, I've always understood and been, clear about how important it is to build relationships. So when you're forming a new business, the key element of moving forward is to have genuine and authentic relationships in place that will position you so that, when someone's looking for the right kind of person, they'll come to you. So that's what I started to do. I slowly built, little pillar by pillar. Probably the significant aspect of it is that when you're starting from the ground floor, instead of trying to jump, 3 steps at a time, if you just build slowly, but surely, then the chances are that you'll have a reasonable success, rather than trying to jump from zero to hero in one fell swoop.
And you've been running Out There Branding for a number of years now. So yes, you've been building those step by steps and building on those foundations for quite a while.
Yeah, well, that's luckily, as you build credibility and as you build, authority in a field, you get more, credibility as you go along. So that's what's happened, is that, you build something on the basis that you make promises, and you stick to your promises. Some of the philosophies that I live and die by are, under promise and over deliver. So if I can't do something, I rather say I can't do it rather than promise it, because that creates unrealistic expectations. And once you start with unrealistic expectations, people expect things, and if they don't get it, they get upset. Whereas if you tell them it's not possible to do this, and I can do it within this frame, and you deliver early, you have loyal customers for a long time.
Wow, absolutely fabulous. And I guess then, with having had, migrating to a new country, losing it all, and the interesting background that you've had of now building a successful business based on those relationships over a number of years, what do you think, or what would you say success means to you now?
Well, let me maybe take this back a step. So when you've had failures, which is exactly what happened to me, it leaves a really bitter taste in your mouth. And I've never forgotten what that taste is like. So as I've built this business, and as it's got more and more successful as I've grown along, I never want to forget what it was like to taste that bitter flavor. And so that's why you remain grounded, because you always remember that whatever you've got in one foul swoop, it can be taken away. So for success means to me that as long as I'm moving forward and as long as I'm getting customers that are happy and customers that are prepared to give me recommendations and Google reviews, and that's how I measure success. So I would say probably the cornerstone of why success means something to me is that I don't like to be measured on what I achieve and on successful projects. I like to be measured when things go wrong. What do I do about it? And that's what I try and do. So in any business, you're going to have times where things go wrong, things go, awry, and there are mistakes that get made. So what I do with those kind of situations is I take ownership of them straight away. I advise my customer there's been an error. I tell them what the problem is, and then immediately I focus on the solution. And I say, we've got some options as to how to solve this, and here's what is on the table to solve. I don't wait for the failure or the problem to become a festering sore. I rather address it straight away and start talking about solutions. People don't want to hear the problem repeated over and over. They want to know, what are our options to solve this?
And I guess the question that I've got there is, and that's wonderful about having that focus on solutions. So when things go wrong and measuring success, not based on what you've achieved, but on what you're doing and how you're helping people when things don't go necessarily right. Would you say that that's your personal view of success as well?
Well, I never ever like to think that, that I've achieved any high levels. I always like to think that, that success is a process. And, it's got twists and turns, and there are going to be times where, you doubt, what you're doing, that it's working the way you'd like it to be working. So I don't like to think of, of myself and my business as being, we've hit it and we know exactly what we're doing and we're successful. I like to think that it's a process, and you just need to be mindful that you got to keep your eye on the ball all the time, because the minute you take your eye off the ball, all of a sudden, things can go a little bit pear-shaped. So I don't see success as an end result. I see it as a process.
Yeah, I love that. Some people describe it as a journey, but others, I haven't heard that before. But a process is the similar kind of thing to a journey, where there is no beginning or middle or end. It's this ongoing journey or ongoing process where, yeah.
I think it's the same word. It's just it's the same thought process, just a different word. Because, a process and a journey it's the same path.
Yeah, and I love how it's also describing that ongoing, that moving element that you were talking about, that you're constantly moving and moving on. And speaking of moving on, what then do you think has been some of the more influential things around having a mindset for success? What sort of tips and suggestions would you share with people about how they can create that successful mindset?
Well, there are a number of things that I hold dear, and some of them are like this: that we need to celebrate small wins. So many people, when they have a small win, they just pass it by and they say, "Don't worry, it's not a big win." But if you can amplify in your mind how important a small win is, then what it does is it gives you that feeling that you've succeeded. And if you can do that multiple times on small wins, then those lead to the big wins. So that's probably one of the things that I've subscribed to. The other is to tackle projects one by one. Don't get overwhelmed by trying to do too many things at the same time, because when you try and do too many things, then what happens? You can't do any of them. So that's another aspect that I like to subscribe to.
So just to reflect then back on, I really like this concept around celebrating the small wins. And many people I've spoken with, they talk about those micro steps and taking the micro wins or the micro steps towards the bigger, like you were saying earlier about building those small blocks for the foundation. So I like this idea that you were sharing around amplifying it in your own mind. I know that sometimes people don't even notice their successes or the small wins or small successes. But I like this concept of also amplifying it in your mind so that people understand that it's celebrating those micro moments throughout the day or those micro successes. And I think that fits in nicely with what you were sharing as well around the tackling the projects one by one, that many people today feel quite overwhelmed or quite stressed, etc. And part of that is that they're doing too much at once, and that tackling that one thing at a time and putting your time and attention into the one thing at a time can also be a way of making that success.
Absolutely. One of the things that I was trying to sort of illustrate is when you celebrate the small wins, what you're doing is you're replaying success in your mind. And if it's a small one, what's the difference whether it's small or big? If you could get that winning feeling from a small win, and you get it again for another small win, you start getting that body feeling that you're moving in success. And that's what a lot of people don't do, is they rather wait for the big wins. And those big wins don't always come, as often as what we'd like them to come.
I've heard it also similar kind of idea about making agreements. People don't quite understand that when they're making agreements, even with themselves, breaking those agreements can break some trust. And I like what you're sharing there about by celebrating those small wins, what you're doing is you're training yourself to actually celebrate the wins. And the more you train yourself like an athlete to celebrate those wins, then you create that feeling and you recognize and want to keep that feeling going. So you keep celebrating those small wins. It's a very clever idea.
Well, actually, what you're saying, just to take it one step further, is that the feeling of winning, and even if it's a small win, the more you can get yourself used to that feeling, the more chances you're going to have of getting the bigger wins, because it leads to the bigger wins. It certainly does. And the other aspect that is really important is to remain within your self-belief that things are achievable, because we all have times in our lives where we doubt that we pointed in the right direction, or we doubt that we're making headway. But as long as you have a self-belief that you're going to get through the obstacles, because we're all faced with obstacles and challenges. There's no one that's exempt from it. If you have a strong self-belief that you can get through it, and that each challenge and obstacle needs to be dealt with rather than pushed aside. Because if you push it aside, what you're doing is you're building up a bank of challenges and obstacles that are going to come back for you to have to deal with at a later stage.
I love this. It's wonderful gold again as a suggestion around reminding yourself of you can get through this, that you have the skills, the knowledge, the expertise in your own life and in your own way to get through it. I really hear you when you're saying that you can get through those obstacles, you can get through those challenges. I imagine actually when you were describing, you spoke about it quite quickly, but I was feeling about when you were saying that, that you set up a business and somebody stole all the money from you. And I was thinking, again, about the mental resilience to kind of come back from that and to go, well, I can start again. I can build a business again. I can create a life from here, because you're reminding yourself that you've done it once before, so you can do it again, can be a real important part of that mental discipline to kind of go, well, things didn't go well, but I can rebuild again.
100%. So one of the other things that I subscribe to is, I like to believe that this is what we should be doing, is any mistakes and faults and aspects that happen on a negative basis, we need to embrace them. And when I say embrace them, I'm talking in terms of take them aboard, because from mistakes come lessons, and from lessons come experience, and from experience comes the next set of opportunities. And if you can feel that process and you can feel that methodology, then you're not afraid about mistakes, because so many people are afraid to make mistakes. When they have a mistake or they have a challenge or a failure, they fall apart. Whereas my philosophy is, I'm happy to embrace mistakes. I'm not scared to make them, because from those mistakes come our next set of lessons. And that's what experience is. You don't get experience from success. You get experience from learning from your mistakes.
I use this example all the time, but for me, it's very, very true about, with Einstein and the cliche that people talk about, the whole, he got it wrong 99 times to get it right the one time. And I think in today's day and age, when we're literally learning new technology, new this, new that, all the time, but people sometimes are a bit hard on themselves and expect to pick it up and understand it straight away, that reminding ourselves that it's about learning and failing and learning and failing and learning and failing, because it's that experience of learning that is what helps us to keep going and to keep learning new technology and learning new ways of doing things.
100%. I've got a lovely story that happened some years ago that is a good, it's a good example of what we're talking about. So my son was a field hockey player, and he was very much a perfectionist. And every time, he'd play hockey, he made a mistake, he used to be so hard on himself. So the coach came across to me one day and he said to me, your son is extremely, perfectionistic. He said, I'm going to have a chat with him and I hope you don't mind. I said, sure. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to offer him a position where he won't make any mistakes. I said, what position would that be? He said, I'm going to put him on the bench. He won't make any mistakes. And guess what? When he did that, my son came to the realization that either he wants to be in the game and he's going to learn from his mistakes, or he's going to sit on the bench and he won't make any mistakes, and there's nothing he can learn from that.
I really like that analogy. You're either in the game of life or you're sitting on the bench. And it's interesting because even when you think about sitting on the bench, life is still happening to you. You perhaps just have not as much input into it, but you're still going to be making mistakes whether you're in it or on the bench in that sense.
100%. I did a LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago, a video around you're either a passenger or a participant. You're either a passenger, in other words, you're sitting and watching, or you're a participant. You're either in, and it's the same with, when you go to a football match or any type of stadium match, you're either sitting in the stands and watching, or you're on the field and you're in the game. And that's what life is, if you're participating, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have successes, you're going to have failures. But out of that, you got to draw from all these aspects to be able to use it to take you to the next level.
It's so true. And I'm also interested because, Roy, I appreciate that a large part of what motivates you and is a part of your life is this service and this giving back. How do you think or how do you feel as a tool for creating mindset success, service is a part of that or a part of that for you?
Well, the thing is that my mindset is focused on getting that feeling again. And the only way you can do it is by helping people. So that's where my mindset is positioned, is that when I hear of a customer that is struggling with something, and what we call going above and beyond, when you do that, it's not something that everybody does. So by having the right attitude and the right mindset to be able to go that extra mile for your customers, what it does is sets you apart. And once you get set apart, then people see that you've got a point of difference. And when you've got a point of difference, you're ahead of the pack.
Yeah, I can really understand that, especially in today's day and age where in many areas, I would say people are experiencing quite poor or pretty bad customer service, and experiences are less than great. When you do come across a service or a business that goes above and beyond and actually is, I would even say, just starts off with being respectful to you and your time, that really does stand out nowadays. And it's interesting how social media really supports it as well. That's where all the little micro communities on Facebook, etc., everybody's always looking and asking out for, where do you get good service, where do you get good this and good that.
Well, the thing is that if you concentrate on that, and that's my business focus, at the beginning of every year, I sit down with my team and we talk about how can we elevate our customer experience. We talk about it every single year. And when I say we talk about it every year, we set limits. So a couple of years ago, we spoke in terms of, we wanted to give first-class service. That's where we aimed. And now we've changed that. We don't want to give first-class service anymore. Now we want world-class service. So if you're always mindful of it, so when there's an issue that comes up, and we all have them in our business, instead of focusing on the problem, what I rather do is I rather say to the customer, look, this has happened. Let's talk about how we can solve it. And that's what service is about. Don't be measured by things that go well, because there's nothing that anyone can measure you on. Measure a business on what they do when things don't go well and how they manage that. And that's only one way to do that. And that's only one way that achieves things, is to focus on the solution, not the problem. People know what the problem is. You don't need to remind them that the problem is this. Rather, let's talk about the solution. And that's what elevates customer service, is when you have a thought process or mindset to solve problems rather than dwell on the mistakes.
And I can really hear, even with the wonderful examples that you were sharing before around, moving to Australia and the first business not working out, that journey and the learning to focus on the solution. This is what's happened, can't change it, need to move on. So if I'm focusing on the solution, and I love how you've used different examples, celebrating the wins and tackling one project at a time, some real specific ways and tools to use to keep that focusing on the solution. I was looking at the book Stolen Focus the other day, and so many people are always talking about how hard they find it to focus now. But that focusing on whether it's those tools that you were sharing, or even on that wonderful, when I asked you about service, that feeling, how do I get that feeling back? That feeling that comes from knowing that I've got on above and beyond. We're talking about for customers here, but it could be if people are watching in a job for a company, above and beyond for my boss, for my team members, for my whatever. It's that same sort of mindset of, I want to create that feeling where people are appreciative of me and my work again. So how do I keep creating that? And I'm really loving how, yes, there's good and days and bad days and up and down and whatever, but bringing that overall focus back to focusing on the solution is a really, really fabulous and wonderful insights.
Super. One of the other things that I also subscribe to, and I share this particular insight on quite a lot of on the social platforms that I do these audios on, is when you're faced with many challenges, which a lot of us are. I have this analogy that detail on a piece of paper each challenge as a separate item, and visualize that you're putting each item into a box. And let's say that you've got 7 challenges, 7 obstacles that you're struggling with. Each one is in a separate box. Visualize that you put it on a shelf, And what you do is you take one off at a time, and you open the box, and you deal with that challenge only. And when you've successfully dealt with it, or when you've dealt with it to a point where you can't deal with it anymore, close the box and put it back on the shelf visually, and then bring another box out when you're ready. Because that's what so many people struggle with the mindset, is overwhelmed. He's got 12 problems all at the same time, and now they don't deal with any of them because they're overwhelmed by all of them. So that's an aspect that I speak about in audio rooms very often, because you know that I do an audio room every Saturday morning, and that's Tuesday mornings, and that's what we talk about regularly, is dealing with one thing at a time to prevent overwhelm, because that's one of the biggest issues that people have, is dealing with multiple issues and then getting overwhelmed and not doing anything.
And I really love, I'm such a visual person, so I really love how you were sharing then about thinking of it and putting each of those challenges into a separate box and then putting them somewhere, knowing that they haven't got away, you're not going to forget about them, you don't need to worry about them for the moment, and then taking it out one at a time. I think that's a really, really wonderful visual and also mental practice as well for people to learn to do, and going back to that focusing on the solution. If you try to focus on a whole room full of boxes, you're not going to find any solutions. But if you pull out one box at a time, you're then going to find the solution for that one particular box. And it may even be that you find the solution for that moment in time, and then you need more information or more whatever, and you put the box away and go on and do something else. Roy, there's so many more, because I can just sense that you're full of boxes of wisdom and boxes of wisdom. What's the best way that people, if they're looking for branding or marketing, or if they're looking to talk to you about some of this mindset stuff, what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm literally, as you know, LinkedIn is close, I think it's 1 billion followers now. And I think it's 3% are active. So I'm one of those 3%. I'm posting generally 6 to 7 times a week. I'm engaging on other people's content at least an hour per day. So if I take an hour of my LinkedIn time, 15 minutes will be dedicated to content creation and 45 minutes to engaging on other people's content. So I can be found on LinkedIn. And needless to say, I've got a company page as well out there, branding. And what you'll find on that company page is branding and marketing insights and tips. I don't look for business on there. I show how I solve pain points for customers and how solutions achieve results for my customers rather than trying to sell things. People don't want to be sold to on LinkedIn. So that's the area where you'll find me, is on LinkedIn. And of course, on my business website, I can be contacted, by email. I have a hashtag called Better Call Roy that takes people to my landing page, which has got all my appointments and all my social medias, is all on the same page, all coming from Better Call Roy.
Oh, well, I love it. I love a great marketing tagline. It's a bit like the Mindset Michele, having that fabulous tagline there. And Roy, as we come to the end of the show, I love this question where I ask people, if they were to give some advice to their younger self, what might that advice be?
Is probably the single most important thing is embrace mistakes. Because people are afraid of mistakes. They're afraid of failures. They're afraid of making errors. And if I could give any advice, it would be to embrace those mistakes and those failures, because there's no lessons that come from success, because you've achieved what you want to. It's when you don't achieve that you take a lesson from it. And the lesson adds into your experience, which leads to the next set of opportunities.
And I really love that. It's been such a fabulous, fabulous key theme today around the lessons and embracing them and learning from the mistakes and gaining that experience, because that's what's going to help you to keep focused on solutions. Roy, it's been an absolute honour and privilege to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you to everybody for watching yet another incredible episode, hearing some interesting insights yet again about how you too can create a successful mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.